briefly, first of all, was an incredible panel, tremendous discussion, very in depth about the tariffs. Was it your idea to put it together?
Yes, it was my idea and invite certain people because I wanted to have the different aspects. It's not only trucking, it's custom brokers, Alpha that involves both U.S. and Mexicans, and of course, the produce folks. Dante was just great. So we had a pretty good panel involved here, and it was good for people to understand. And as Jorge Figueroa said, does the American public rise up? Well, I think once the prices, there's a lag period, as Dante explained, not only for that, for cars and other places. Once they get rid of the inventory, then those prices are going to go up. They're going to start seeing day-to-day impacts. In fact, the numbers, $3,800 to $4,000 tax increase per individual is what the estimates are. And all that is not only the tax increase on individuals, but it's also the uncertainty. I think every single person talked about uncertainty because, businesses plan years in advance. And if you're not sure what's going to happen the next 90 days or the next 10 minutes or the next 90 minutes, it's hard to plan. And that's what's causing the uncertainty. That has a negative impact to our economy. So it has an impact on the consumers and certainly has an impact on businesses, which is the overall area. Consumer confidence, see what's happened to consumer confidence.
It's going down.
It is going down.
So, yeah, Dante spoke about bananas. You spoke about cars. When the inventory's gone, that's when the prices will go up. Will they go up even though there's this pause in place by the president, this 90 days? Are things still going to be bad even though the full impact of those tariffs have not been, he hasn't pulled the trigger yet?
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, there's still a 10%. There's still a one on steel and aluminum. I mean, there's different tariffs. And plus they're doing, they got some of the tariffs in place also. So it just depends what it is. Now, things between the U.S. and Mexico, Canada are a little different from other places. And he has talked about, said 75, I don't know which 75 countries are involved. Think about it. You're going to negotiate. How long did U.S.-Mexico trade agreement took? It took a long time. You're going to negotiate 75 different individual trade agreements in less than 90 days. Realistically, we know that's not possible, especially when there's been a lot of cuts to employment up there in D.C. So again, I worry about this uncertainty. And I think the reason I put this panel together was that the American public needs to hear from the individual areas. Custom brokers, and I'm a custom broker. I don't practice anymore. I got the license hanging along with the law license. But, they're usually the more quiet industry. You hear about trucking, you hear about other industries. But now that there's tariffs, who's in the middle of all that? It's the custom brokers. And you heard from the National Custom Brokers Association to the local, it's uncertainty. Do we charge, and remember, who puts a bond up for duties? It's a custom broker. So the custom brokers have to be very, very, very careful because that could affect their bottom line if there's a problem with that. And if you don't know what the duties are, what they might be, they have to advance that. Or if not, they have to tell the company, hey, you got to advance this. It just disrupts the normal trade patterns that we have.
And in the Q&A, we heard from the Mexican consul's office. And I think some of his remarks were all about the Mexican workers that the US relies upon. It's great to say, okay, we're going to have manufacturing back in the US, but where are those workers coming from? What did you make of his remarks?
He's absolutely right. When you look at the number of jobs that are available and the number of people that are available, we're short here. We're short. And remember, that's just in general. So imagine if you need a specific skill set, where are you going to get those workers from? And that's the bottom line is look at the numbers of jobs that are available and the actual workforce here. It's short. So the consulate's absolutely right. And the other point that he made it was that, don't you want a secure, prosperous, strong Mexico? It's to our own American national interest to have a strong neighbor. So I want to have a strong neighbor to the south and a strong neighbor to the north also.
Because if you don't have a strong Mexico, where do those workers go? You know,
For jobs.
for jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And we got a 1,954-mile border with Mexico. The Canadian is even larger than Mexico's border. So this is why I'm saying, we can't attack our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, and say we're going to put tariffs. They've been good neighbors. And plus, we did a trade agreement back 4 or 5 years ago, and it's coming up for a revision. So if you want to address that, let's move the revision up. Instead of next year, let's move it up a little bit. But there's a framework in place that we need to address.
Because of the city you represent, the district you represent, the number one port in the country. When you're in Washington, this tariff issue must be front and center. It must be your number one issue right now. Is anybody listening to you and other border legislators, congressmen, because you live, breathe, and eat it? Do you have any opportunity to have any influence with the White House?
Well, this is what I was talking about. You got to have checks and balances. Look, I talk to a lot of my Republican friends. They're free traders. Remember, it's always, the saying is, Republicans are free traders, Democrats are more protectionistic. This whole thing has been turned upside down. And in talking to my Republican friends, we don't like this, we don't like this. But they don't say anything. Quite honestly, I'll be very straightforward. They're afraid they're going to be primaried in a Republican primary, so they don't say anything, even though they know it's not the right thing to do. Look, I agree with the president that we need to look, with his intentions. We need to build more American jobs, more companies here. But you don't use you need to use a scalpel instead of an axe or a chainsaw to address the problem. And by using tariffs across the board, it's a very blunt tool that you're using. Can you use tariffs selectively and carefully and under some sort of strategy? Absolutely. Should we look at not only tariffs, but also the non-tariff barriers that other countries have on the U.S.? Absolutely. But you do it in a strategic, measured way so you can address the issue instead of having collateral damage like we're seeing. What everybody talked about today was collateral damage, the uncertainty, the largest tax increase on consumers. All that is what I call collateral damage. Intentions are good by the president, but the tools that they're using, in my opinion, are not the right tools.